exactly 7:42 a.m. on a quiet Monday morning when everything changed. Judge Monica Blake stepped out of her sleek downtown apartment building in Washington, D.C., ready to start another day in court. But the sight that greeted her on the curb froze her in place. Her car, a silver Tesla, was completely destroyed. Windows smashed, tires slashed, hood crushed in like someone had gone to war with it. Shattered glass sparkled on the pavement like ice. It wasn't random, it was personal. Then she saw it, a single note fluttering beneath her windshield wiper like some cruel calling card. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Thick black marker, sharp, ugly letters, greater than "Stay quiet" or "Next time I tease, not just the car." Her breath caught, but she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even look around for witnesses. She just stood there, stone still, because Monica Blake wasn't just anyone. She was a federal judge, one of the youngest and only black women to ever sit that high on the bench in her state. Brilliant, respected, feared by some, and hated by people like Officer Greg Stanton. Greg wasn't angry because she wronged him in court. He was angry because she existed in power, and he didn't think a woman like her deserved that seat. 2 weeks earlier, she had thrown out one of his cases, a wrongful arrest of a Latino teenager. Greg didn't take that well. He stared her down in the courthouse hallway and growled through his teeth, "Greater than you think that robe makes you untouchable. Watch yourself." She thought he was just mad. Now, she realized it wasn't just talk. And the worst part, this wasn't over. Judge Monica Blake didn't go to the police. She went inside, locked her door, and made one call. Not to a local officer, not to a courthouse colleague, but to someone whose job it was to hunt down corrupt law enforcement. David Knox. He wasn't just her best friend from law school. He was now a lead investigator in the Department of Justice's Internal Affairs Division, and he didn't play games when it came to dirty cops. The second he heard her voice, calm but tight with tension, he said, "I'll be there in an hour." True to his word, by 9:15 a.m., David stood beside Monica's wrecked car, examining the damage like a crime scene technician. He didn't flinch. He'd seen worse, but never against someone this high profile. Monica handed him the note. His eyes scanned it. His jaw locked. Then he looked at her and said just 3 words, greater than "Let's trap him." Within hours, Monica's world turned into a silent surveillance zone. Hidden cameras were installed near her apartment entrance. A small mic was tucked into her office, buried in a law book. They even swapped out her regular phone for a DOJ-issued one with a 24/7 live recording app. Because they both knew something important, a man like Greg wouldn't stop with one warning. His ego wouldn't let him. He needed control. He needed her to feel cornered. And just like clockwork, he made his next move. That Friday, after a long day in court, Monica returned to her chambers to find another note, this time slipped under her door. "Greater than dismiss the Simmons case or I leak your brother's sealed record. Your career ends now." She froze, because no one should have known that. He had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. And now? It was time to bait the trap. Judge Monica Blake stared at the folded piece of paper like it was on fire. "Dismiss the Simmons case or I leak your brother's sealed record." It was chilling, because it was personal. Her younger brother Marcus had made a mistake at 19, got arrested for petty theft during college. But the record was sealed, and that part of his life had been buried for over a decade. How did Greg Stanton even know? Simple. He'd been digging. This wasn't about one dismissed case anymore. This was a campaign of fear, and Monica understood something most people didn't. Corrupt power doesn't just want to hurt you, it wants to humiliate you. So she didn't fold. She played smart. Monica used a burner phone David gave her. She crafted a reply to Greg's anonymous threat. Her tone was perfect, nervous, apologetic, compliant. "Greater than can we meet? I don't want things to get worse. I just want to talk. Please." She hit send. Greg took the bait within minutes, greater than tomorrow. 6:15 p.m. behind the old Ace Hardware on 9th. No tricks. Monica knew the spot. Deserted, out of camera range, or so he thought. The next 24 hours were a blur of planning. DOJ surveillance vans were secured. Wires were tested and taped discreetly beneath her jacket. David ran her through the game plan over and over. "Let him talk, don't react. Just get him to say everything," he said. Monica nodded. Her heart pounded, but not from fear, from purpose. This wasn't just for her anymore. It was for every name Greg had erased, every life he'd crushed behind a badge. And that Saturday evening, as the sun dipped low and the parking lot fell into shadow, Judge Monica Blake stepped out of her car wearing a wire, ready to finish what Greg had started. He wouldn't see it coming. The lot behind the old Ace Hardware was exactly how Monica remembered it, silent, empty, and cracked with time. She pulled in slowly at 6:10 p.m., parking near a rusted dumpster. Her hands rested on the steering wheel for a moment, steadying her breath. Beneath her blazer, a DOJ-issued wire hummed softly. Her phone, lying face down beside her, was already streaming the audio to a black SUV parked 2 blocks away. Inside that SUV, David Knox and 2 federal agents, listening in real time, fingers hovering over tactical radios. Greg showed up at 6:17, 2 minutes late. He drove an unmarked grey truck, slid into a space beside her, and stepped out slowly. He wore dark jeans, a windbreaker, and mirrored sunglasses, like some bad detective in a TV drama who thought he was untouchable. His swagger screamed confidence, but his words were pure poison. "You look tense," he said, walking up to her window. Monica forced a nervous laugh. "You didn't leave me much of a choice." He leaned in, elbows on her car door. Too close. Breathing authority he hadn't earned. "You do what I say," he whispered, "or I blow up your career. That sealed file? Gone public. Your brother goes down. You go down." Monica's heart thudded, but her face never cracked. She nodded slowly, pretending to fold. I understand." That's when he went further. "You judges think you're gods," he hissed. "But robes don't stop bullets. Understand?" And that was it. From behind the dumpster, the black SUV peeled out, tires screeching, doors slammed. David Knox's voice roared across the lot, "Greater than federal agents. Hands where we can see them." Greg spun, confused. "What the—" He reached for something in his jacket. "Don't move!" An agent barked, weapon drawn. Greg froze, dropped his hands, the same smug face, now pale and twitching. They cuffed him right there on the oil-stained pavement. "You set me up!" he screamed at Monica. She stepped out slowly, calm as ever, and said, "Greater than no, Greg. You set yourself up, the day you threatened a federal judge." Inside the DOJ's secure holding facility, Greg Stanton sat in an interrogation room, sweating, silent and stunned. The walls were plain, the air still, but the tension unbearable. He wasn't in control anymore. Across from him sat 2 federal agents and David Knox, arms folded, laptop open. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't have to. They had everything. Audio from the parking lot, crisp. His voice, threats, blackmail, it was all there. The threatening note from Monica's car. Dusting revealed his fingerprints, plain as day. The second note? Handwriting experts had already matched it to past internal reports Greg had filed. Phone logs, GPS pings, surveillance footage from nearby traffic cameras. It wasn't just strong evidence. It was a mountain, and Greg was buried under it. At first he tried to play dumb. "You think I'm the only one who hated her?" Anyone could have left that note. But the agents didn't blink. One of them clicked play on a recording. "Greater than you do what I say, or your career's over. Robes don't stop bullets." Greg swallowed. That voice was undeniably his. Back at the courthouse, Judge Monica Blake resumed her duties. She didn't hide from the moment. She presided over hearings with the same grace and sharpness that earned her the robe. But behind her calm demeanor, she knew it wasn't over until justice was fully served. 2 weeks later, the case went to trial, and this time, Monica wasn't the judge. She was the witness. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back. Every major news network covered it live. Greg walked in wearing a cheap suit, face drawn, eyes down. No badge, no gun, just a man finally held accountable. And when the prosecutor stood and read out the charges, tampering with a federal officer, destruction of property, blackmail, terroristic threats, The room went silent. Monica watched from the stand, her head high. She was no longer a target. She was the proof that power misused would be met with consequences. The day Judge Monica Blake took the witness stand in Greg Stanton's trial, the courthouse felt different. Security was tighter. News vans lined the block. Reporters clutched their notebooks like they were holding grenades. Inside, the gallery was filled to capacity. Law students, legal scholars, even retired judges came to watch. Everyone wanted to see what justice looked like when a corrupt cop faced a federal judge he once tried to destroy. Greg sat at the defense table, hands clasped, jaw clenched. The smugness was gone. He looked like a man trying to shrink out of existence. A cheap Navy suit replaced the uniform he once abused. His lawyer, a public defender, sat stiff beside him, clearly aware of the uphill battle ahead. Monica entered the room and took the stand like she belonged there, not as a victim, but as a pillar of law. Her black robe had been replaced with a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, face composed. The entire room stood as she walked in, a sign of respect that even Greg couldn't escape. The prosecutor began, "Your Honor, can you walk the jury through the first threat?" Monica nodded and recounted everything: the wrecked car, the note under the windshield, the anonymous message threatening her brother's sealed record, the sting operation, and finally Greg's chilling words in the parking lot, "Greater than robes don't stop bullets." Every word she spoke hit like a gavel strike. When it was the defense's turn, Greg's lawyer tried to poke holes. "Judge Blake, is it possible you misinterpreted the message?" She stared at him. "I'm a federal judge. Words are my job. I know the difference between a misunderstanding and a threat." Then came the audio. The room went silent as Greg's voice echoed across the courtroom, "Greater than do what I say, or your career's over." Some jurors shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at Greg like they were seeing a ghost. And when the audio ended, Monica looked straight at him. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She had survived the storm. And now, she was the lightning. The trial moved swiftly. The evidence was airtight, the testimony devastating, and Greg Stanton's defense weak at best. Over the next few days, witness after witness painted the same picture: a cop with a history of intimidation, racial profiling, and unchecked ego. Officers who once feared retaliation came forward under the DOJ's protection. Stories emerged. People arrested for questioning his authority, false reports written to justify unlawful searches, and even threats whispered in courthouse hallways. And then came the closing arguments. The prosecutor stood before the jury, pacing slowly, his voice calm but heavy with weight. "Greater than this case isn't just about threats, it's about power, corrupt power. A man who wore a badge and believed it made him untouchable, until he targeted the wrong person. He didn't just threaten a judge, he tried to dismantle justice itself. That cannot stand. Not today, not ever." Then the room went still. The jury left. The entire courthouse held its breath, and when they returned less than 3 hours later, the foreman rose. "Greater than we find the defendant, Gregory Stanton, guilty on all counts." The judge, an older black man whom Greg had once openly mocked in court, leaned forward on the bench, adjusting his glasses. He looked at Greg like a parent who had seen too many children throw their futures away. "Greater than Gregory Stanton," he said slowly. "You used your position not to protect but to terrorize. You betrayed your oath. You targeted a federal judge. For that, you will serve 20 years in federal prison, no chance of parole." The gavel hit like thunder. Greg's head dropped. His mouth hung open. He turned around, eyes searching for Monica in the gallery. She stood, arms folded, expression calm, not vengeful, just resolute. Greg mouthed one word, "Greater than sorry," but it was too late. Monica didn't nod. She didn't smile. She simply turned and walked out of the courtroom as the entire gallery rose to their feet. Not because the trial was over, but because the right side had won. By the next morning, Monica Blake's story was everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, local and national news. Social media exploded with headlines: "Greater than rogue cop threatens black federal judge." DOJ sting ends in shocking arrest justice for Judge Monica. Officer gets 20 years in landmark trial from threatened to triumphant. Judge Blake stands tall in courtroom showdown clips of the trial circulated online. Millions watched Greg's smug confidence evaporate in seconds as federal agents stormed that parking lot. The moment the gavel dropped, people cheered, not just because justice was served, but because it felt like a turning point. Commentators called it a new precedent. Legal analysts praised Monica for flipping the power dynamic in a justice system that too often protects its own. Civil rights groups called her a symbol of courage and resilience in the face of institutional intimidation. And Monica? She kept working. She refused interviews, turned down news segments, declined invitations to morning shows. She didn't want fame. She wanted change. Inside her chambers, flowers poured in, notes from other judges, thank you letters from former victims of Greg Stanton's misconduct, messages from law students across the country inspired by her strength. But one envelope stopped her in her tracks. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, greater than thank you. I didn't think anyone would ever hold him accountable. I was 17 when he arrested me for nothing. No one believed me. But I saw what you did. And now, I believe again. Monica folded the letter and held it to her chest. That meant more than all the headlines combined. This wasn't just about her anymore. It never was. It was about proving to those who were silenced, bullied, and broken that justice could still roar back to life, louder and clearer than any threat. A week after the sentencing, Monica Blake walked into her courtroom like she always had, head high, robes flowing, and mind razor sharp. But something was different. The bailiffs nodded with a bit more reverence. The clerks stood a little straighter. Even the attorneys, many of whom had once underestimated her, now watched her with full respect. Not because she'd become famous, but because she had proven what true strength looked like under pressure. She wasn't just Judge Blake anymore. She was a symbol. During a recess, she sat alone in her chambers, flipping through case files. A quiet knock tapped on the door. "Come in," she said. It was David Knox, wearing his usual casual suit, a coffee in each hand. "You look tired," he said, handing her one. Monica smirked. "I was tired the day I put that wire on." They both laughed, finally able to breathe. David sat across from her, his tone growing serious. "You know, you could take a step back, write a book, teach, even run for something. You've got people watching now." But Monica shook her head slowly. "I don't want the spotlight. I want the system to remember who it works for." That was Monica Blake. No drama, no ego, just resolve. Outside her office, a young black woman, barely 25, waited nervously with legal documents in hand. She was a clerk, fresh out of law school. When Monica opened the door and motioned her in, the woman's eyes lit up. "I just wanted to say, seeing you up there, it changed how I see this job," she whispered. "You make me believe we can belong here too." Monica smiled gently. "You already do." Because for her, real power wasn't about a robe or a title. It was about using that robe to protect those who had none. The sun was setting behind the city skyline as Judge Monica Blake stepped out onto the courthouse steps. The sky burned with streaks of orange and gold, casting a warm glow over the granite columns behind her. A small crowd had gathered at the base of the stairs, not protesters, not reporters, just everyday people. Black, brown, white, young and old. Some clapped softly as she emerged. Others just watched in silence, nodding with a kind of quiet reverence. One little girl, no older than 10, sat on her father's shoulders and pointed, eyes wide. "Daddy, is that the judge from the video?" He smiled and whispered, "Yes, baby, that's her." Monica paused for a moment, taking it in, not as a hero, but as a reminder. A living reminder that justice doesn't come from power. It comes from the courage to use it rightly. Inside, the courtroom lights were dimming. Her gavel sat alone on the bench, waiting for tomorrow. But she had already made the most important ruling of her career, not in a case, but in her own story. Greg Stanton was behind bars. The DOJ had opened new investigations based on the evidence uncovered during his trial. And across the country, young lawyers, law students, and even officers were talking, not about fear, but about accountability. As Monica walked to her car, now fully repaired, clean and quietly gleaming under the streetlights, her phone buzzed. A message from David, Greater than more complaints filed. Your stand is changing things. She smiled faintly, typed back, greater than one case at a time. Then she looked up at the courthouse, tall, ancient, and intimidating to some. But to her, it was just a place. The real power stood in the people who dared to defend it, even when it meant standing alone. And Monica Blake? She never stood alone. Not anymore. Because when one black woman in a black robe refuses to bow to fear, the whole system shakes. The robe stands strong. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Hit like to support real justice. Hit subscribe if you believe no one is above the law. And share this video, because Judge Monica's courage deserves to be seen by the world. Tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were in her shoes? Let's talk about accountability, courage, and the power of standing up, even when you're standing alone.